This is a reminder to turn your mobile phone on mute. And please note that no film recording is permitted unless previously approved by the show producer. Thank you and enjoy the show.
30 minutes to the start of the recording of panel discussion. 30-minute call, Bettina.
The final editorial meeting was way too long. Blood pressure too high. Pulse too high. Blood sugar not optimal. Wet hands, not enough physical activity. Focus. The team won't show up for another 20 minutes.
Everything okay?
My introduction is okay. The only people that I need to be wary of are the sometimes rather unpredictable action artists and the fairly freaked out activists from the degrowth movement. For as far as I know, could be rather dogmatic. The show's not supposed to unsettle anyone further, so I guess I shouldn't let them talk too much. The rest of the guests are, in my estimation, easy.
Hey, you've got this. Just remember, this will be our biggest audience yet, broadcast in 150 countries.
Yes.
Ooh, phone call. Oh, it's for you.
Yes? Oh, hi, darling. Hi, I'm good. How are you? The show's going to start recording soon, so we don't have a lot of time. Of course, Ben. I will host the show calmly. I've been doing that for 10 years now. I haven't let any guests throw me off. I'll be home around 11:30. By the way, you might want to turn up the air conditioning in the bedroom. It could get quite hot later. Well, it hasn't been that hot for a few days now. I mean, it was 39 during the day and a little over 30 at night. We all manage pretty well. Besides, we have our trusty turbo aircon. I just said that. Ugh. Anyways, you can do whatever you want with me. Oh, I like that too. Oh, I love you too. Hold on, there's already guests straying in the studio. I gotta go. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, hi, Minister. Nice to see you again. And Miss Miller, you too, of course. Please proceed to the guest lounge. Alana, our producer, will look after you.
Hello, welcome. Let me show you.
Good evening, Bettina.
Julian, what is the almighty CEO doing in my humble abode? I need to get ready for the show. I need peace and quiet to concentrate.
I know. And I know it was a bit of a shock when we had to change the topic for the year-end show with such short notice.
Okay. What about it now?
Especially with today's show. We and the entire network are bearing a great responsibility. You must have a clear understanding about the aim of the discussion.
Okay. That is actually not acceptable, talking to me like this so close to the show. We cover all the key issues in the editorial meeting we just had. The concept is set. Bear in mind, my journalistic freedom and independence are non-negotiable. Even as the CEO, you can't direct me on how I run it. Besides, I have all the editorial help I need. Also, I'm fully on board with today's goal. So, tell me exactly what's your concern?
I've never talked to you so close to the start of a show before, but this is a really special one. It's only been 6 days since the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change broke the terrible news of the tipping point, and ever since, there have already been a huge number of broadcasts on the subject worldwide. Your show should, and indeed must, prevent a second Spain. Do you understand?
By second Spain, you're surely referring to my colleague's talk show. which aired on Wednesday on the Spanish television station, and what happened in the aftermath?
Of course, after that broadcast, there were major riots, not only in Spanish cities, but across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. The show made many people feeling hopeless, as if the tipping point had already passed. Some intellectuals even spoke of a world without a future. We cannot let that happen again. For many, the Lawan program was the final straw. I never imagined that television could still mobilize people on that scale, and clearly, I wasn't the only one surprised.
Of course, I saw that show as well, and being streamed live on the internet, that's the reason why the word got out so quickly. With the top panelists, scientists on their show, warning that decades of inaction has finally pushed the global climate over what has been called the tipping point. But the show was not constructive at all. There were no real answers and not even an attempt to suggest how we can survive the scorching summers, the extremely weird and unusual winters, and all the other extreme weathers in between. You see, Julie, I've done my homework.
Well done. I know you're good, very good, and indeed the best. That's one of the reasons why I lobbied for the renewal of your contract last year and the increase of your contract.
Thank you. But nevertheless, I do believe that my colleague Miguel Hui and his talk show was conducted pretty well. I was thinking my show shouldn't promote resignation, but hope. But I'm not going to tell my guests what to say. I'm not censoring anything. Are you okay? Should I get a first aider?
I'm so tired. I can't sleep properly for weeks because of the heat.
Are you sure you don't need a doctor?
No, I'm fine, thanks. I just need to drink some Get Me Right. Tell me, how do you deal with the heat?
Gosh, you're giving me a fright. I'm so sorry that you fell. Of course, I'm often exhausted too, so I shower more often and drink lots of mineral water. I've had my trusty smartwatch for almost over a year now, which completely monitors my health. It tells me when I should see a doctor, what medicine, supplement I should take. It even shows me the real climate data. It shows me my CO2, dust particle in the air, allergens in the air.
So back to what we were talking about. Of course, you shouldn't tell guests what to say. We're not in China or Russia or the US for that matter. But you could guide the discussion so it highlights how they're searching for solutions and inspire the audience. Remind people that scientists are working on solutions and suggest that progress is possible. If needed, adjust the panelists' speaking time. And be especially cautious of Mia Schellinger from the degrowth movement. And she's always on her phone, and the unpredictable action artist router. We haven't worked with them before. The goal of the show should be to spark a constructive debate for Australia and not dramatize the tipping point. Try to keep the ball flat.
Gosh, it's probably too late for that. If you wanted that, we should have designed the show differently and invited different guests.
That's true, unfortunately. But with a very short notice we've got on Tuesday, the recording had to be rescheduled to today to allow for the airing of your show the day after tomorrow. We could not have known at all that a program with comparable content would be broadcast in Spain on Wednesday with such fateful consequences.
I like to stress that conducting a constructive debate is ultimately not the job of television, but the responsibility of politics and our institution, and of course, of each individual. every single one of us have to react somehow to the tipping point. So tell me, what you're pushing here, is that really coming from you or someone else behind it?
I just want this show not to further unsettle people and make them aggressive, as was done by the program in Spain.
Of course, I don't want that either. But you didn't answer my question.
That's all I can say.
Thank you. You actually answered my question. So, you got pressure from upstairs.
Recording starts in 15 minutes.
Please go now. Not much time left. I still need to get my makeup touched up and oh my gosh, the panelist is already in the green room and the audience enters the studio 10 minutes before.
I wish you every success and hope the discussion takes the desired course.
Oh, I don't know about that. The atmosphere is heated just like the weather. And my guests will certainly talk about that too.
I am counting on you.
I'll do my best.
Thank you and good luck.
10 minutes to the start of the recording. Please, this way. Minister. Mia, sit any way you'd like. Frank. Thank you very much.
Oh, beautiful.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Studio 17. My name is Alana Spencer, producer of today's show. Thank you for being our studio audience for the Bettina Rowland Show, now and the future. We have several camera points in the studio today, as you may have noticed. I'll call out when I start or stop filming so everyone will know when to behave themselves. We'll begin shortly. Cheers.
It is my pleasure to welcome the world-renowned sociologist and futurologist, Professor Stephanie Fissler. 2 years ago, she wrote the now international bestseller, The Climate Shock and the Future of Humanity, which is being sold for over 10 million copies and being translated into 28 languages. Professor Fissler is also the author of many influential books on global crisis, which has sparked heated debate. Professor, we are so glad that you're with us tonight to take on the challenge of telling us in plain English what the tipping point really means. Wish me luck! I'm also pleased to welcome Mia Schillinger from regional Victoria. At just 27, Mia already has won the Alternative Nobel Prize for her groundbreaking work with the degrowth movement. She has developed a practical, contradiction-free system to sustainable living that meets the strictest standards of sustainability. Mia, it's wonderful to have you with us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Rowland. Good evening. It was, of course, my pleasure to accept your invitation to the show tonight. However, having now realized who our fellow panel members are, I'm feeling quite uncomfortable having to sit with Miss Millett and Miss Malden.
I'm surprised, Mia. I'm sure that you know CEO Valerie Miller and Federal Minister of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communication and the Arts, Josephine Malden, will be here with us tonight. They are very important discussion partners, just as you are.
No! I was not made aware when I received the urgent call to replace one of your panel members. If I had known, I would have certainly prepared myself accordingly.
But you have to accept all the guests tonight.
Well, if I must, for the good of our planet, for those who will be listening now and those who will listen in the future, or view in the future,
I will do my part to make sure that the people have the information they need to understand what's at stake.
Now I'd like to introduce Valerie Miller, OAM, CEO of Energy Group Power in Sydney. She has been part of the company for 20 years, 15 on the board, and the last 8 as CEO, transforming the company into one of the richest companies in Australia. Up till now, most of Energy Power's electricity still comes from fossil fuel, like lignite, coal, and gas. Valerie, it's a pleasure that you're with us tonight. You know, some of the questions from the panel could be rather uncomfortable. That's exactly why your perspective is so important here tonight.
Good evening, Miss Rowland. Mia Schellinger's comments are utterly beyond me. I can't wait to see what this discussion brings. And I am not afraid to give uncomfortable answers to uncomfortable questions.
Now I would like to introduce Frank Rauter. As an action artist, he has been active on many fronts. He uses social media to point out social and political injustice. Just a few months ago, together with Greenpeace, he carried out a spectacular action at the Antarctica to bring attention to the dramatic melting of Larsen C ice shelf. And to push the government to finally deliver on their climate promises. The action came at a personal cost. Frank lost 2 toes to frostbites. I'm glad that to see you have recovered from the ordeal, Frank. Welcome.
Thank you, Bettina. Good evening, everyone. Incidentally, I fully endorse what Mia said about Mr. Millert and Miss Malden. Both are particularly to blame for the fact that the tipping point has now been reached. They do not belong on a show like this, but before a tribunal that condemns those primarily responsible for driving the world to the tipping point.
Thank you, Frank. I'm so glad you're here. Otherwise, I would have left.
Frank, I ask you to remain objective. This show is not intended to point fingers at guilt of individuals, but rather promoting hope.
But I found my observations quite constructive.
As did I.
You, Mr. Rotno, whatever it is, you don't know what kind of nonsense you have just put into this world. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Excuse me. My last name is Rauter, not Rotner. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm not ashamed. Thank you very much.
Miss Millett, ignore Rauter. It's not worth going into the bullshit he just said.
Thank you. I'll try.
Well, let's move on. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Josephine Malden. If this show is just to be aired in Australia, I wouldn't need to introduce her. Because according to a recent survey, more than 90% of Aussie aged between 18 and 80 knows her. The Right Honourable Josephine Malden has been Member of the Parliament for 5 years. For the past 3, she has held office as the Federal Minister of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communication and the Arts in the coalition of Liberal, Nationals and the Greens. I'm very pleased that you're here with us tonight, Minister.
Thank you very much, Miss Rowland. Good evening. I look forward to having a debate that remains objective and hope that we are keeping to the facts. The polemics and absurd accusations we have just heard are completely unacceptable. I hope this pathetic episode will not be included in any way.
Of course not.
We need calm discussions and good decisions to master the future in view of the tipping point, and that is why I am here tonight.
5-minute call.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a quick overview of how tonight's show is designed. First, we'll look back at the crisis and the catastrophe caused by global warming, which led to what has been now called the tipping point. Then I'll turn to our panel of experts for their insight, options and opportunities to stop climate changing from worsening. And ideally, how we can resolve part of the problem in the medium to long term. My hope and my expectation is that by the end of this program, we will be able to share a positive outlook into the future, inspiring hope for audience all around the world. For you that's new to this show, my show is not like any other talk shows. I'll begin with a leading question, then my panelists are free to openly, authentically, and to debate the issue. Along the way, I will bring in breaking news and fresh facts to make sure that our discussion stays fresh and relevant.
10 seconds. Getting serious now, everyone. Camera. Sound.
My first question is to Professor Fisler. Please tell our audience in a few words that what led to the tipping point and what it really means.
I think it will take more than just a few words. As we all know, this topic is very complex, and we don't have time to dive into all the great details, so I will just paint you the big picture. Let's think back a few decades. The 2000s were noticeably warmer than the 90s, which were already warmer than the 80s. Then came the 2010s, hotter still, and since 2020s, even hotter again. What a surprise! Regular weather recordings in Australia that started in 1880 shows, apart from 1998, all the hottest years have been in this century. And interestingly, despite all the heat records, it happens even though the sun has been at its record weakness. For several decades now, the sun's brightness has been at its lowest. Decreasing solar activity has made little difference to man-made global warming.
Very important that you also address this aspect. Respect.
Today, the Earth is heating up faster than at any known time in the last 65 million years.
Time for our first announcements. Breaking news. Deadly heat waves threaten lives across Europe and Australia's southeast. We're just learning that the World Health Organization has confirmed thousands of deaths in Europe due to the last heat wave. This adds to the growing toll of almost annual extreme heat events. Meanwhile, a newly released bulletin from Australia's Department of Health reveals an unusually high number of deaths last January, particularly in the southeast. Authorities warn of more intense heat waves ahead, with forecasts predicting over 40 degrees Celsius for 80 days, and yet another 150-day stretch above 30 degrees. These extreme conditions could disrupt major events like the Australian Open. In Melbourne alone, nearly 600 people died from heat-related causes, and by 2050, that number is expected to at least double. With temperatures rising, officials urge people to take precautions immediately. Calamity News will bring us more updates on the deadly heatwave as the situation develops.
Our audience may find more detailed facts. Please refer to the fact sheets provided.
So sorry. Oh, hello everybody. Hi. I'm so sorry. I am late. I am traveling on public transport. There was a complete shutdown of the trains because of the heat. The rails buckled. I just thought I wouldn't make it.
Please take a seat. Everyone, please welcome evolutionary biologist, ecologist, Paula Svatier. Now, Professor, please.
With global warming, the temperature in the Arctic and parts of the Antarctic, they have increased above average. As the ice melts, the sea levels are rising faster than expected. Now, with this, then this becomes a problem, because not only at the polar ice caps, but the glaciers are also retreating all over the world. Take Switzerland, for example. Most of its glaciers is expected to be gone in the next 30 to 50 years.
Ooh, thank you. Well, this is true. So, with less snow falling and glaciers retreating, well, this is not good because it affects food systems and they become fragile because there's less water. Also, inland navigation on rivers, well, that could become impossible because the water will become very shallow. It will become clogged with debris, and this will lead to further extinction of flora and fauna. That makes it even worse.
Yes, and I imagine winter tourism will probably suffer as well because of
That should be the least of our concerns.
I agree. Over 1 billion people live in coastal cities. Melbourne, Shanghai, New York, with hundreds and millions more live along the river. With rising seas and clogged rivers, homes and livelihood are already threatened. The number of extreme weather events will also continue to climb. Droughts, heat waves, bushfires, affecting us, humans, flora and fauna, and the infrastructure we all depend on.
Yes, but can you finally tell us why we have now reached the tipping point?
Or why we have now reached the tipping point? Well, I bring something that will help me to demonstrate. Now, inside this bag, they are not chocolates. Even though as much as I would like it to be, I'm just reusing the bag for the environment. Okay, let's see. Our Earth's climate system is incredibly fascinatingly complex. Everything is interconnected. When one part shifts, the rest, they feel it. Take the wind system, for example. They are shaped by the temperature in the air and the ocean. And those winds, in turn, influence wind, rain, snow, sleet across the globe. And at the same time, the polar ice caps and the surrounding oceans, they act like the planet's thermostat, helping to regulate the entire climate. So when human activity disrupts this delicate system, let's say industrial agriculture, deforestation, pollution, they tipped. It's irreversible. There's no going back. That's why they are called the tipping elements or the tipping point. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, believes our entire climate system has tipped.
Breaking news! Maldives faces imminent threat as rising seas swallows islands. For years, the 1,200 island nation has spent over half its budget on climate defences, with as much going to preventing dam erosion as to education and healthcare. Yet the crisis is worsening. Seawater is contaminating drinking supplies on 70 islands, and coastal erosion is shrinking land masses at an alarming rate. Entire communities have already been forced to relocate, and without swift action, more islands could soon be uninhabitable. The same applies to our neighbouring Pacific islands. The clock is ticking. Calamity News says stay with us for further updates.
Thank you for the announcement. Now, Professor, please continue.
Yeah. So, we know for sure, which tipping elements that finally push us over the tipping point. They are the Arctic sea ice, the West Antarctic ice sheet, the Greenland ice sheet, the boreal forest or the taiga, the Amazon rainforest, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, the Sahara West African monsoon, the Indian summer monsoon, and the thermohaline Atlantic circulation. The West Antarctic ice sheet, they have tipped. It's in the process of breaking down. The Greenland ice sheet is tipping at a rate that will raise the sea levels by several meters over the next few centuries. And because of the Greenland's melt, the Indian summer monsoon and the thermohaline Atlantic circulation have also shown signs of tipping as well. So you see, when one tip, it pushes on the others and creates a vicious circle of tipping points.
Exactly. If even one of the tipping elements has reached its, and the entire global climate system has reached its tipping point, any effects on any other tipping points cannot be mathematically predicted, and therefore may have unforeseeable consequences.
Yep, that's right. So normally the ice on the Arctic Ocean, they serve like a protective barrier. They reflect sunlight back into the space, keeping the ocean water cool. But as the ice disappears, the dark ocean water is left exposed. It absorbs the sunlight, keeping it warmer and warmer. The result, summers bring about even more rapid melting, and winters struggle to form new ice. So, this creates a major shift, thousands and thousands of kilometers away. Changes we cannot predict with precision. What we know for sure is global warming is driven by the greenhouse gases that are released into the atmosphere by human activity. 97% of the scientists believe carbon dioxide or CO2 and methane are the main culprits.
Too much CO2 in the atmosphere is like a soup that is too salty. If even a little too much salt was added to it, it would be inedible. 100 grams of soup must not contain more than about 0.3 grams to a maximum 0.5 grams of salt. This maximum salt content applies to all foods. More salt in 100 grams of food, with few exceptions, would make us very sick.
That is a great analogy. It is so nice to meet you, Frank.
That's what you do.
Now, this is correct. So, the extra CO2 in the atmosphere, it's not only destroying, it's killing things. It destroys the corals because the oceans are already too warm, they are over-acidified due to the absorption of too much CO2. So, along with the corals bleaching, they're turning a ghostly white. They're becoming potential graveyards. Also endangered are marine creatures, great and small, dolphins and whales. I mean, friends, don't we want to save the Great Barrier Reef, the wonder of Australia, for the children of the future? Every continent on this earth is connected to the oceans. So, marine protection is protection of life on the land.
Yes, and therefore, ocean dredging is absolutely necessary.
Most certainly is not.
The clearing of the Amazon rainforests and other tropical rainforests for farming and development has caused global biodiversity and river system damage. When 30% of the rainforest is cleared, rainfall patterns begin to break down. So that's why preventing a large-scale deforestation is not just about saving trees or hugging trees, kumbaya. It's about protecting the stability of our climate system.
If I understand you correctly, Professor, it is simply proven by the 1992 Rio Earth Summit that the cause of the tipping points are actually human activity, or the greenhouse gases that they emit into the world or into the atmosphere.
Yes, that's right. In 1992 Rio Earth Summit, can you believe it? The world leaders actually came together and agreed to combat dangerous human interference with the climate system. But that was over 30 years ago. Here we are. Some countries have stepped up, but most are still struggling to follow through.
Professor, what is your view on the additional problems of the permafrost in the north of Russia? The frozen ground there is slowly thawing due to global warming. This activates bacteria that releases methane gas. In addition, the thawing of the permafrost soils could release huge amounts of CO2, as you said.
Yes, the affected areas are vast, not only in Russia, but across Alaska, northern Canada, and Greenland. As you said, Frank, when permafrost thaws, they release methane. It's a greenhouse gas far more powerful than CO2, but it doesn't linger in the atmosphere as long, so thank goodness for us. And this methane is also created by cattle farming and rice paddies. So in that sense, every steak that we eat adds to the problem. And I love my medium rare, juicy ribeye tomahawk. And talking about steak makes me hungry. But hey, so thank you for the vegetarians and vegans out there, because you have helped to save the planet. Thawing permafrost also releases CO2 into the atmosphere. It's expected to be as much as 900 gigatons. Yes, it's like a ticking time bomb.
That is very concerning. The CO2 acts like a blanket over the Earth. Much like a greenhouse screen, this allows sunlight to enter, retaining the heat and locking it in. That is why CO2s and methanes are sometimes referred to as greenhouse gases. The increase of CO2 emissions that humans have caused has thickened this blanket, trapping in more heat and therefore increasing the overall temperature of the Earth. This global temperature increase is what we call climate change. Many climate researchers, which I have the research right here, they have stated that the global temperature increase must be limited to well below 2 degrees Celsius if possible, or at the very least 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial value. This is to limit the climate change and prevent the Earth from overheating. Because that's very bad for us humans if the Earth overheats, you see. Scientists have repeated this at many UN climate conferences. In preparing for today's discussion, I read again that especially in the World Paris Climate Conference of 2015, 196 countries committed to the goal of keeping their CO2s under this their CO2 emissions to be under this 1.5 Celsius increase limit. That is no longer achievable due to the tipping point, is it?
Yes, that horse has bolted. Even at 1.5 degrees Celsius, many islands would drown. The latest climate models predict that our global temperature will increase by 3 degrees to 6 degrees Celsius or more by the end of this century. Yeah, it's all doom and gloom. And talking about this topic usually sucks the air out of the room. And in a way, it already has. But still, if humanity comes together, I believe we can change the future.
For these reasons, any initiative, no matter how small, that contradicts the tipping point is enormously important.
There really is no alternative to this. We must drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions to not further deteriorate our quality of life and to retain a world worth living in for our children, grandchildren, and future generations. It is imperative that we reduce global CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere. We must bear in mind that in 1990, global CO2 concentrations were 22.5 billion tons. In 2024, it increased to 41.6 billion tons. That's almost double.
And since then, the CO2 emissions have increased by 600 to 800 million tons per year. More and more populous countries in Africa and Asia, like Nigeria or Indonesia, have been adopting a more consumerist lifestyle, which uses up more resources and adds more CO2 into the atmosphere.
We have to learn from the wisdom of indigenous communities how to realign humanity with nature. This is what happened at COP Brazil 2025. Now, we cannot depend on selfish Western societies who are obsessed with greed and what benefits me. We have to take actions.
Since you refer to solutions, what do you mean exactly when you talk about taking actions? Can you be more specific?
Yes. Stephanie?
Sure.
May I?
Yep.
So, the principle surrounding levees. So, levees have to surround critical infrastructure and towns to protect against floodwater. All along the Murray, when it floods, we have to maintain and then build and build up the levees. But in Western Queensland, that land is so flat. In 2025, levees were pointless because levees there can't fight floodwater. So in that year, over 150,000 dead sheep, goats, cattle, native wildlife were drowning to death in mud. And that was a result of climate change.
These findings were emphasized again and again at the last World Climate Summits, but have been followed far too half-heartedly so far. World's gone bonkers. If the efforts by world leaders to tackle the obvious issues continue to be conducted so poorly, then in the not too distant future, many more climate refugees will come from central and equator regions to the north and the south. The most frequent causes of people fleeing their home countries are still civil wars and displacements, but more and more people are fleeing from Africa and Asia due to the devastating environmental conditions that cause hunger and great poverty. And that is ultimately the result of climate change. By the way, in 2010, a significant proportion of refugees seeking asylum in Europe left for climate-related reasons.
Yes. From 2007 to 2010, Iraq and Syria faced the worst drought in 100 years. on top of the wars already going on. As the land withered, the rural population moved towards the cities, but the cities are already unbearably overcrowded. There is a struggle for jobs. Water is scarce. It is expensive. The great drought in this region was the result of global warming, and it aggravated the civil war going on. So the refugees from Iraq, from Syria, were not only war refugees, they were climate refugees. We shall not send back people who have a valid reason for fleeing their homes. It is curious. Under international law, there is no category for climate refugee. The Geneva Refugee Convention does not recognize or provide for climate refugees. But ultimately, the climate refugee will have the same right to asylum as the war refugee.
It's good the way it is. Otherwise, even more refugees would come to Australia, and we had to intern them on other islands too before finally, officially deporting them. The boat is full. Disgraceful!
That's intolerable.
If there are even any small islands left.
Your family looks like the way immigrants once do.
Stop. Cut.
None of you should make such statements.
Yes, I shall. Especially here where many people will see and hear me. Hopefully, people in Africa and Asia too. If you're listening, don't think about coming. Our borders are closed.
With this statement, you bluntly aim at votes on the right.
Our party is in the political center. Let's be very clear about that.
Mia, you want to say something?
Yes! I absolutely need to clarify something about the minister's statement. Climate refugees have contributed the least to global warming through their lifestyles. They haven't even benefited from economic growth, yet they are the ones losing their homes because of this global obsession with growth that fuels climate change. You should be ashamed of your statement, Minister. I feel it's disgraceful that you are using this show as a platform for your political gain. I feel sick having to share this space with you. You lowlife! Sick!
You're a criminal!
Frank, please refrain from using such personal verbal attacks. You too, Mia Schillinger, watch what you're saying. Thank you. Look, Frank, you have a lot to say, maybe. Right? I apologize for Frank's comments.
Apologize?
You know, apologize.
Well, Bettina, do you want to tape my mouth shut?
You two are not only aggressive stirrers, but also loud. You would pay for what you just said. I will see to that. First thing Monday, I'm going to sue you both for public insult.
And I will join you in this, Josephine, because I have also been insulted during this show. And you, Ms. Rowland, you need to take a long, hard look at yourself and the kinds of guests that you invite to your talk show.
I do hope you don't want to tell me how to do my job. Please, everyone, let's stop bickering in front of our audience.
Bickering would be all right. I wouldn't object to that. But I and Miss Millett here have been accused of special culpability for the tipping point.
I don't think that's right either. So, Miss Pateri, please continue.
What Mia Schillinger says, in reference to climate refugees, is correct. We should consider resettling people. They can no longer live on their land because of rising seawater. We should make massive preparations to resettle people as part of so-called development cooperation. Minister, you should prepare for climate refugees from our neighboring Pacific islands to be resettled in Queensland. You should prepare for this.
Now even you are changing tone. I wasn't expecting this.
Oh, for goodness sake. Oh, please. I hope you don't sue me on Monday, too, for expressing an opinion.
No. No need for that.
Oh, I must say I'm relieved, Josephine.
Professor Fissler, would you like to say something now?
Oh, sure. We need to create huge overflow areas so rising seas and heavier rainfall don't overwhelm our city. We also need to improve how quickly water can drain away. Come on, come on. The question is,
Sit down, please.
do we try to block or redirect floods that will happen more frequently and severely in places like Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane? So that's why, Paula, the flood protection you mentioned is very critical. And by the way, the Netherlands are the world leaders in flood protection.
If we succeed in climate protections and precautions, then our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will look back on us with pride. If it fails, well, they'll rightly condemn us.
Even with all these harsh facts and worsening quality of life due to climate change, people keep pushing for economic growth at any cost. Companies create unnecessary demands, making crisis even worse. We urgently need to change this obsession with growth.
Paula, your thoughts?
Hands up in the audience and people on the panel. Who is Catholic here? Do we have any Catholics? No other Catholics here tonight? Oh, yes, we do. Here we go. Now, Pope Francis, in his 2015 environmental encyclical, he spoke out against mankind's current way of life as suicidal. Never before, he said, has humanity treated the earth as badly as in this, the 19th and 20th century. He said we are turning the earth into this enormous landfill. That global warming is the greatest challenge facing humanity today. This is why we have to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have to stop burning fossil fuels immediately.
All right, now I finally need to say something.
Miss Millett, I haven't quite finished.
But I have not been able to say
I know,
anything.
but I haven't yet
get
finished.
a word in.
I understand,
And we're
but I
rolling.
need to finish what I'm saying.
You may, Miss Millett, just not now. I do believe Miss Pateri should continue.
Camera. Sound.
Due to this lack of respect for the environment, we have to stop this crazy notion of unlimited development on a planet of finite resources. So many animal species are already extinct or endangered. Look at my t-shirt. These are animals, flora, that are endangered. More than a fifth of all plant species are threatened. Over the last decades, we have lost 90% of wheat, maize, and tomato varieties. Since the 1980s, 20% of tropical forests have been cleared. The Amazon rainforest, it's this living, breathing engine of weather. But if we clear the forest, this rain machine just breaks down. The forest withers. There is more wildfire. There is more drought. So we have to learn not to clear the forest. We have to protect the forests.
The Sumatran tigers are disappearing at an alarming rate. Deep in the rainforests of Sumatra and Borneo, tiger mothers lead their playful cubs through the dense undergrowth, teaching them to hunt, to hide, to survive. But sadly, their world is disappearing. Every minute, the area the size of 35 football fields is destroyed due to illegal slash-and-burn clearing for palm oil plantations and cattle farming. The Indonesian government's last known appraisal, in 2025, estimated no more than 600 tigers left in the wild. And with their homes burning, cubs may never reach adulthood. Will their future be confined to wildlife reserves and zoos, like Delilah and Kambali, who raised their cubs safely in the Adelaide Zoo in 2022? As these forests with their countless plant species disappear, so do the species that call them home. The Australian government is discussing this crisis, but is it enough to stop the destruction? Calamity News reporting the real stories of the tipping point.
It's true. Rainforests are being destroyed for the cultivation of soy. It is also being destroyed for farming and production of concentrated feed for farm animals. And for the palm oil production and farming, especially in Brazil and Indonesia. Farmers illegally burn forests, driving endangered animals, as Mr. Terry just mentioned, driving them to extinction. Burning these forests releases a massive amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. This accelerates global warming. In 2019, Indonesia cleared over 200,000 hectares of forests to build a new capital city, despite public opposition stating very clearly that no one wanted to move there. Why? The Indonesian government claimed it was necessary because Jakarta was frequently flooded and suffered from severe congestion. We must stop this destruction before it's too late.
If the Australian government can protect the rainforest, this will be a huge achievement in slowing down the effects of the tipping point.
I fully agree with what you all just said. The Australian government has already done a lot to reinforce the protection of the rainforest.
But Australia is a global deforestation hotspot and the only developing country on this list.
But it's the multinationals who evade compliance with laws. They produce in countries where the rules and regulations for sustainable and fair production do not apply.
The public should be informed. Products must be much better labeled with sustainable quality seals and fair working conditions. And products that do not comply should not be allowed to be imported into Australia.
Well, it's so easy to claim in theory, but I'm sorry, it's virtually impossible to realize in our globalized world.
That's a cop-out. Plus, consumers have to pay more attention to sustainable and fair products. But for this, the products have to be much better labeled, as Mia just pointed out.
Miss Schillinger, I appreciate your wealth of knowledge at your fingertips.
Especially since you are still so young. Respect.
What are we going to tell our children? We are leaving them a world without a future. Or is anyone here of a different opinion?
I reckon we shall spend the rest of our show talking about solutions, shall we? We shall point out positive thoughts on how we can deal with this apocalyptic crisis, and we shall talk about ways to prevent the crisis from getting worse. We shall outline on how global warming could be partially, if not eventually, completely solved. We owe this to many millions of viewers.
I'm not happy, Bettina, that you simply ignore my belief that the world has no future.
Let's spend the rest of the show talking about how our world doesn't have to be futureless, shall we?
But it will become futureless if we don't get our act together and do something about it now.
Not band-aid solutions, but drastic actions.
Exactly. We need to effect change on all levels.
By the way, degrowth means growth reversal or growth turnaround. Isn't that correct, Ms. Schillinger?
Yes, correct.
Since you are such successful activists, can you please tell us your philosophy or the inherent core of the degrowth movement? I'm sure you will have solutions to mitigate, to counteract the tipping point.
Yes, I'd be delighted to. May I?
Yeah, of course.
Right. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say the following points are totally important and closely interlinked. We need to invest in public infrastructure instead of spending money on fancy buildings and new roads. Governments should focus on public transport, cycling, and walking paths. This would make cities quieter, healthier, and more livable. Instead of constantly building new roads encouraging more car use, we should use existing infrastructure more effectively. Harmful tax breaks that those company cars and aviation fuel use should be removed since they are creating unnecessary demand. Education must also change. Climate and environmental issues should be taught from kindergarten. Urban expansion must slow down. Green spaces must be protected. And whenever possible, land should be restored for nature, as it benefits the climate in many ways, not for airport extensions.
I agree, Mia. Tell us, how the degrowth movement actually looks like in practice?
Yes. The difference between theory and practice is that the degrowth movement is already happening worldwide. Many projects like the Transition Town movement in over 50 countries focus on reducing energy and moving away from fossil fuels. These communities work together to cut emissions and fight global warming. Degrowth supporters also avoid mass consumption and waste, producing about 80% less CO2 per person than the average population.
Thank you, Mia.
Of course, thank you.
Breaking news! Chaos erupts as mass looting sweeps Australian cities. Panic and desperation are gripping parts of Australia as shops are, once again, being brutally looted. This year has already seen more incidents than the entirety of last year, and the situation is escalating fast. Looters come from all social backgrounds, with a shocking rise in women and children participating. The target? Drinks, of all kinds. There's so little fresh water, while cash registers and other valuables are left untouched. Many stores are being stripped completely bare, and stolen vans are increasingly being used to transport the stolen goods. With costs expected to be passed on to consumers, tensions are rising even further. The Australian government has been pushing for stronger shop protections and will address the crisis in a high-stakes meeting tomorrow. Calamity News says stay with us for the latest developments.
Now, a short interruption to our discussion with a question to our studio audience. Dear studio audience, does any of you use a CO2 app on your smartwatch or the slightly older smartphone models? This app actually measures all the CO2 production, including the almost 0.8 CO2 emission per person return flight from Melbourne to Brisbane, and the approximate 9.6 tons of CO2 emission per person return flight from Melbourne to New York. It also measures all the CO2 emission in the manufacturing of the product that you purchase. It measures your home, It measures your train miles. It also measures your home. Even measures the food that you consume.
According to scientific models, to be climate friendly, each of us should not produce more than 2.3 tons of CO2 per year. So that includes emissions from daily activities as well as the manufacturing emissions.
Exactly. Must not exceed 2.3 tons per year. But according to a report here that I have by Statista, here in Australia, the CO2 production per capita per year is on average 15.01. That is nearly 7 times more. This includes babies and small children who do not drive fancy cars or fly aeroplanes. They should be bringing that statistic way down. Yet, the average is still so high. Additionally, that target of 2.3 CO2 production is achievable. The supporters of the degrowth movement, who are behaving climate friendly, have proven it can be done. They have been using only a little over 2 tons on average. Therefore, they obviously have been living a climate-friendly life and successfully met the goal of under 2.3 tons per year. Setting an example we can all follow.
Has this been independently determined and verified? I thought that the degrowth movement was anti-development and anti-improvement of people's lives.
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have the report right here. There was an independent study for Australia commissioned by our government. Miss Malden should know all about. The CO2 production per capita for degrowth supporters that I just stated was determined in this report. Right here.
Mia, what the degrowth movement is doing is just brilliant. Good on you and the movements.
Thank you so much for this extremely important information, Professor Fissler, and for your detailed facts, Mia.
Miss Rowland, you must have a CO2 app on your beautiful smartwatch. Why don't you tell us how much CO2 you produced in the past 12 months?
I see, Minister. I have this CO2 app for almost 2 years now. I have to admit, in the past few months, I have created a bit, a large amount, I have to admit. In view of the tipping point, I surely have to reduce my carbon footprint significantly.
But you can give us a figure for the emissions you caused, can you?
Of course. For the past 12 months, I've produced a little over 40 tons. 43 to be exact. If I were to mention a lower number, I'm sure the tabloids will get a hold of the information and will be publishing it the day after tomorrow. Because my smartwatch data cannot be kept secret. As you know, I'm a journalist and I fly a lot. But I've made all of my flights carbon neutral through carbon offsetting. I can prove that. The compensation money is used to rebuild on renewable energies, and the company that carries out these services are credited and are audited on a regular basis.
Despite the compensation fees paid, you are not a role model.
I never said that.
Okay, I admit, as a politician, I also travel a lot. My CO2 emissions are probably similarly high and have been for years.
Bettina, your CO2 emissions are really far too high.
Yeah, that's 20 times more. See, almost everyone has excuses for using, to be prone to produce CO2 emissions. Everyone should take the people of the degrowth movement as a role model. If energy were far more expensive per se, then large amounts of CO2 could be avoided. But even this simple control instrument hasn't been used by the government so far.
It's not so easy to regulate prices in our globalized world. To do this, many countries would have to join in.
But this is the core responsibility of politics, of politicians, to make sure that something like this can be achievable.
But the economic competitiveness, especially in view of India, China, Brazil, would suffer. Mass unemployment would be the result.
You don't get it, Millert. Nothing at all. All countries must get out of global markets and into national, regional markets. That would diffuse many crises. Then, energy could be taxed in a completely different way.
Why don't you go into politics to implement such wonderful stuff? You will soon learn that this can only be done with a lot of patience and very small political steps.
But we don't all have time to be patient. This crisis is now. We have to act now.
But you also need many supporters for this, here in Australia and overseas. If India and China don't get involved, it's pointless.
However, due to the tipping point, there's no time left for playing politics. If politicians don't do something now and act quickly, just as Frank just announced.
I do not dispute that at all. My government will act quickly.
Thank you, Ms. Schillinger. I'm sure Minister will make a statement on behalf of the government very soon by the tipping point.
Breaking news. In a shocking development, Federal Agriculture Minister Gladys Hancock has just announced her resignation, citing a lack of political support to address the ongoing global warming crisis. More specifically, the current ongoing drinking water shortage. This crisis has been escalating for months, with Australia now enduring its longest drought in a century. 13 months without relief. Conditions are even worse than in 2019, which was previously recorded as the driest and hottest year in the country's history. With no immediate solutions in sight, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have voiced their growing concerns over water shortages, agriculture losses, and the broader impact on communities. If resigning is how the government reacts to the tipping point, what are citizens like us supposed to think? Calamity News reporting the real stories of the tipping point.
Excuse me, Ms. Rowland. Before we go on, I really need to draw your attention to an important issue that has not been mentioned so far.
Thank you, Ms. Millett. Please enlighten us. I'm sure we are all curious to hear your constructive ideas.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, well, I have sat here patiently, listening to everything that has been said so far, especially Professor Fissler's detailed explanation. There are completely different reasons for climate change. This claim about the so-called tipping point made by the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change on Monday is nothing but a conspiracy formula against the global economy. Humans are not the cause of global warming because the climate has always been changing. The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change is clearly engaged in scaremongering here. And on Monday, in Paris, they put the world community in a state of alarm, recklessly and totally unwarranted. I suspect that the solar power manufacturers, the wind power manufacturers, the alternative movement are trying to pull the wool over its eyes. They probably want to disband the existing social order. The scientists of the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change doubt that the greenhouse effect was exasperated by human activity. Anyone can read about this on the internet and find many good examples to support this fact. Because of the current global warming situation, we cannot, absolutely can't, question the fossil economy. If we did, our future would be truly threatened.
Miss Millett, I expected a constructive contribution. Your statement is definitely a quite unpleasant surprise. Let's bring back our focus onto how we can move forward rather than dwelling on misleading claims.
Valerie, you know that you can't trust everything on the internet. These good arguments that the global warming is not driven by human activity, they are not supported by any scientific evidence. A lot of the names on those sites are either fake or forged. Even my name can be found there, and I have taken legal action. Many of my colleagues have also been misquoted, and they have taken legal action as well. Well, is it impossible to stop? Yeah, of course it is. It's the internet. You knock one down and another one pops up. Oh, look, that one comes back from the dead. And the harm lingers on. But so does our resolve. Even if it feels like a losing battle, we will keep fighting back. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is not conspiring against the global economy. It is not serving anyone's political agenda. It is not scaremongering. And that's the truth.
Well, look, here I do have to agree with Miss Millett, well, at least on the point that, well, there has always been climate change. Or should I specify, the climate has always been changing in our history. Based on a representative poll conducted on Thursday, 55% of respondents do not believe in man-made global warming. People believe that global warming is a natural climate fluctuation that has occurred for 40, 50, 60 years, and humans have always adapted to whatever situation arises.
Who initiated this poll? And who were the respondents? How many were there? In any case, this poll only reflects opinions. It doesn't discount the fact that there is real scientifically proven facts that global warming is real and is caused by us humans. We need to do something now before it's too late, as I keep saying.
You are beyond salvation, Millett. How dare you spread such nonsense? You should be ashamed of yourself because you know you are talking nonsense. Okay? Especially you, as a top politician, Minister Malden, you should not side with the climate skeptics.
I'm not, actually.
Such people control the fortunes of large corporations. They think that only a prophet and say to themselves, let the devil take the hindmost. They really are jointly responsible for the destructions of life on this planet.
You don't always have to shout like this, Mia. We can understand you.
Hey, the reality is most people live by the maxim, after me the deluge. After I die, who cares?
Well, consumer mentality and leisure behavior of the wider community suggest exactly that.
That's not okay. That's not okay. After me the deluge? That's probably what our climate skeptic Miller thinks. An energy company that still uses fossil fuels like oil and gas and coal. I feel sick and disgusted to share this. I can't stand here anymore. I will not stay here anymore. I'm leaving. Frank, are you coming?
Yes, people like Millett and Malden belong before a tribunal and not on this show. They have played a major role in the destruction of the earth. You scumbags!
Hey, you cannot talk like that.
I just did.
You will not get an invitation back ever. Dear viewers in Australia and all around the world, dear panelists, dear studio audience, that is the essence of a live show. As you can see, some of our guests are having a bad day and are not on their best behavior. Before we continue, I would like to ask the studio audience who here actually shares the view that global warming is not caused by human actions for at least the last 250 years. Please, show of hands. We are nearing the end of our show. So far, we have not heard from our government regarding what their action going to be regarding the tipping points. Or Valerie Miller, who is, after all, CEO of Energy Power Group, who owes us a great responsibility on how she will convert her company to renewable energies. Which one of you, Professor Fisler and Ms. Spiteri, will ask the last question of Minister Molden regarding this? Your statement will not be commented on nor discussed.
Okay. Since the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, the Australian government has done little to act. We still rely heavily on coal and gas, renewables expansion is slower than needed, and Australia is still the world's largest exporter of coal. The Liberals have just ditched the net zero. Yet, Australia is among the countries most exposed to climate impacts. Josephine, what immediate concrete steps will the Australian government take at home and abroad to address these tipping points?
Stephanie. Well, I acknowledge that the Australian governments have severely underestimated global warming for the past several decades. As an immediate measure, my government will quickly reaffirm its pledges to the existing global climate treaty. To do this, it will significantly increase financial contributions to developing countries and emerging economies for climate protection actions of all kinds.
Breaking news. A staggering update confirms this deadly heatwave is now officially record-breaking, igniting an unprecedented bushfire crisis across the southern hemisphere. Emergency services are on high alert, while authorities urgently call on residents to take every precaution and to stay vigilant with official updates to protect their lives. Calamity News reporting the facts.
This year alone, New South Wales saw more than 100 major fires. Paula was telling us about how the corals are dying in the Great Barrier Reef. And on the Climate Change Performance Index, where 64th place is the worst, Australia ranks 52nd. And maybe not in Melbourne, but Australia is one of the sunniest countries on Earth. Endless potential for solar energy. Australia is also an island continent with surrounding oceans for wave energy. So what do you think, Minister?
In Australia, we will introduce an array of policies to achieve the reduction of unnecessary energy consumption in private and business settings. In addition, we want to increase regenerative energy production and introduce incentives for safe energy.
Minister, we knew long before the tipping point that oil, gas, coal are climate killers. Why does the Australian government have no plan to phase out the mining of coal and gas as Germany has done? Why? And why does the Australian government still allow export of coal to many countries, even though this actively contributes to global warming? Now, Germany has phased out mining. Why can't we?
Well, we have only learned since Monday about the tipping point. Upon learning about the latest development, we immediately put into action the measures just outlined. However, if we were to abandon coal like Germany has done, for example, it would be a revolution for Australia, with incalculable consequences for our economy. Not only would we lose hundreds and thousands of jobs, but a great deal of our revenue. But I acknowledge, in view of our 2050 commitments, we do need to discuss a possible phase out of coal sometime.
What the minister offers in face of the tipping point, it's far too little. The Australian government has to massively invest in our renewable energy sources. Friends, the window is closing. We have to shut the door on profit. We have to give nature a chance.
And that's what I will be campaigning for from Monday on. But despite the tipping point, a switch from coal and gas to just renewable energy will take a long time to be technically realized.
Oh, the aviation and shipping industries still don't have targets to cut down their CO2 emissions. They have successfully lobbied themselves out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Is the Australian government going to take any steps to address this?
Well, it's not ministerial responsibilities to decide that, but I will work for it. Well, we may even revive one of the brilliant ideas one of my predecessors in 2024 had for an emission-free alternative. Building nuclear plants.
What a wonderful idea, because my company, Energy Power Corporation, will gladly provide the uranium.
Well, Australia is at a tipping point. We have a chance to move quickly on renewables, building new jobs in solar and wind to replace those in fossil fuels. By changing the way we produce and consume, I believe we can build a sustainable and profitable industries. Nuclear isn't the answer. A single nuclear reactor could take 15 to 20 years to build. And even though it might be clean, but the waste remains toxic for thousands and thousands of years. There is still no solution to that. It's just too risky, too expensive, too little, and too late for Australia. Look, whether or not you believe in climate change, this planet is where we live in. And like any home, it suffers wear and tear. We can choose to fix it now or ignore the cracks until the whole system structure gives way. I know it's hard to think long term when daily struggles like family responsibilities, work pressures, cost of living feel more real and more immediate. And climate change can seem distant, like something that's happening somewhere else, to someone else, in another century. And the truth is, if this crisis turns into an apocalyptic doomsday emergency tomorrow, of course we humans will act. But by then, it will be too late. So why not choose to act now? Through the steps we take as individuals, each of us. Small steps, big steps, communities, and businesses, big or small. And we also need some bold action from the government and the global leaders. With all that, I believe we can build a better future.
Thank you very much, Professor Fisler. That is a fitting closing statement. We are at the end of our show. A big thank you to our panelists, and of course I would like to thank the studio audience and the many millions of audience around the world. We have now learned a bit more about this complex topic. We now know what led to the tipping point, and we also know what is the possibility of future viability of humanities despite the crisis. We also know that Australian government needs to act quickly and that Australian people will take on the challenge of doing their bit. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week when we discuss another interesting topic, the global overpopulation and its impact on sustainability.
Thank you, team. Wrap up in 2 minutes. Another special thanks to you, our studio audience, for being part of the show. The show we've just aired tonight will air in 2 days' time. And if you may, Bettina,
Yes.
here is a quick 1-minute preview.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, here in the studio and wherever you are following the show out there. Since Monday, the whole world has been talking about the tipping point. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, has now rated it as highly probable, meaning climate change has now finally reached the point of no return. According to the IPCC, our planet will continue to warm with worsening consequences. Any actions that we take now will only show results generations later. This is a deeply unsettling finding. That is why my guests are here tonight, to share their expertise on the cause that led to the tipping point. But most importantly, to share their expertise on exploring the possibility of maintaining, if not improving, on the quality of life despite the challenges. Let me begin by welcoming evolutionary biologist and ecologist Hula Spiteri. She's known far beyond Australia with her award-winning TV program and her best-selling books on nature and species conservation.
Tonight and supporting us. Please spread the words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our real producer.